So I spoke to the psych. Yep, cool, good to go. Got back to Australia. 3 months later, went and did a follow up, and it was basically like, Corporal Koba, how you doing? I was like, yep, good. Blah 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 blah. Answered some questions, told them all the right fucking answers that they wanted to hear, and then walked out. I never got followed up on ever again. And I haven't. I've been lucky, man. I don't have PTSD or anxiety or depression or anything like that. But that is simply because I took those skills that I learned as a soldier and I just reapplied them.
Yeah.
It took me a little bit of time to kind of float through life and lose my identity and purpose a little bit. And I needed that time off after Afghanistan. I got out in 2012. And I kind of needed that time to decompress and travel the world and kind of, like you said, just fucking live my life a little bit. But then once I realized I was just kind of floating, I'd lost my purpose, I'd lost my direction, my structure. I lost my mojo essentially. And once I realized that, I was like, why am I not doing the things that made me such a fucking good soldier? Getting out of bed at a certain time, making my bed, shaving every day, these small daily habits that, had become SOPs,
Yeah.
standard operating procedures. And once I noticed that, once I started reestablishing them and just kind of tailoring them for what I want to do with my life, making them specific, I'd already been taught these fucking skills. All I need to do was then repurpose them into the person that I wanted to be, the person that I wanted to become, the direction that I wanted to be moving career wise. That I realized I was like, hey man, like fuck, I've been taught this stuff. Why have I not been using this for the last year and a half?
Amen, mate. That's it. And so many people as a part of the current veteran transition process and problem and solution paradigm keep looking at new qualifications, new education, all this. Whereas what I'm really trying to work with the veteran community at the moment is exactly what you said, mate. The soft skills and the ability to define and develop intrinsic and our own extrinsic motivations, the quality of the individual veteran as a member of a workforce, member of a team, member of a culture, member of a society, is actually something that any corporation would spend as much money as they could to instill within the basic building block of capability, which is the humans of their workforce. So it's just, the issue is, mate, it's being able to work with people to help draw the pathways and link their own understanding of their own capabilities. And I was the same. I was like, I don't have a platoon anymore. I don't have a company anymore. I don't have a position to lead and all this. Whereas, mate, I have zero rank, I have zero title, I have zero nothing. But leadership by example is all you need to do. And you're not leading in order to lead. You're leading in order to lead yourself. And you're just doing what needs to be done. And it's really helped me understand and realize, because I became so competent at providing physical courage, that it just wasn't ever something that came into consideration. We're just great at doing what needed to be done, putting ourselves in danger, doing all that. Whereas life outside of service really ever requires physical courage. And that's where we really find ourselves in a place where we don't feel relevant. But what we actually have is the flip side of that, which is moral courage, because we actually have the basic building blocks of personal ethos and values that have led us to absolute greatness that has caused us to not even fear for our own lives. And that's perspective and experience that some people are never going to have. And it's harnessing that as responsibility to then apply that to really appreciating what matters in life and doing the right thing, moral courage. You're not going to get killed for it, but still it's one of the hardest things to do. And that's the best way we can lead by example, is just being the best that we can be for the right reasons.
That was very well said, mate. I want to go back to something you said earlier about getting out and you kind of, I guess, said that you were suffering in silence
Mm.
and you were kind of on your own. You felt like you didn't have anyone around. You didn't have your team anymore. You were kind of just left to your own devices, as most people are. Now, when you started talking to other people, actually, let's go back.
Mhm.
You said you were thinking about committing suicide and you had this, I guess, light bulb moment where you're like, no, I can use this for a better purpose. When you started talking to people about this stuff and you shared what you went through, did you find that other people were also suffering in silence and had like, because we're guys, man, we just go, yep, fuck it, I'll deal with this myself. And we don't speak up about shit. Girls are very good at talking to their friends
Yeah.
and bouncing ideas off each other. Whereas as guys, we tend to hold shit in and think that we can deal with things ourselves. And when it gets too much, you just pull the pin. And, we know that this has happened way too often in the veteran community. I've lost, many of my mates over the last couple of years, and I'm sure you have as well. But once you started having those conversations with other guys, did you find that they were going through the same thing as well?
Well, that was the fascinating thing, mate. And you can imagine it was a slow and incremental process from my aha moment where I was all filled with purpose again through to, 24, 48 hours later, where I was back into my own self doubt thinking, you can't do this. You're not big enough. This is much bigger than you. And it was the real thing that actually made me do everything was then speaking with and reconnecting with a couple of my guys from my platoon, reconnecting with people like Scotty and others, and every single person had the same story, or a version of the story where they doubt themselves and be taken to that place. And so many of those people, the first time they were talking about these stories, I'd had guys that I'd seen at the absolute greatest of human spectacle in firefights and shit, breaking down, telling me about their situations. And that's why I was like, holy cow, there's something in this. We have to talk about this, and we have to make it okay to talk about this because it's so therapeutic and cathartic to do it. And the only thing that is literally holding ourselves back is ourselves. So that's where I was able to lead by example and just being vulnerable and authentic and be able to actually see and others help me in just appreciating that we're all human. Obviously I had the huge benefit of the timing of my stuff being 2020, where I think as a culture we had some very rapid evolution for our ability to actually appreciate things like actual mental health and emotional trauma. But yeah, just so fascinating, mate. We just sit there bottled up, and all it takes is literally speaking about this stuff. There's no magic pill. It's communication and connection in that communication.